Got it. There you go. So with that, I'd like to introduce Nicola Harrison. She is our author this month for the book Hotel Laguna that we read for August. And I'll start with my sort of overviews. I read this right when it came out, actually before it came out, Nicola. I think I got an arc from you. So it was back in early June. So if I forget some of the characters, I'm sure you guys will let me know. But I just was fascinated with the whole thing, the scene. I have spent a lot of time when I was younger at Laguna Beach. When I used to work for a company that was headquartered in El Segundo, California, we go down there on the weekends and hang out. This is like a long time ago. And I just love that area. It's beautiful. So that sort of this book in terms of setting really takes you right there, which I thought was really kind of interesting. And then I'm a little tired of World War II stories, but this one didn't feel like that to me. This was really a story for me of sort of this women's strength and perseverance. And I just think Hazel's character was just a lot of fun to read. And of course, the whole art scene, which I'm going to ask you some questions about, Nicola. But it was a great beach read for me, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was light. I'm tired of all the, death and dismemberment and some of the horrible things that have happened in some of the books that we read. And to me, it was a nice, refreshing change from that. It was a positive story. It was a little mystery in there. And Nicola, I think you did a fabulous job. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here and to see such a great crowd of readers.
Yeah. So just give us a little background on, I know this is your third book, maybe. What inspired you to write this book about Laguna Beach? I know you live not far, or you live there, or you grew up there, or give us a little bit of overview about that, and then sort of how you kind of got into this whole storyline.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm in a new co-working space that I just joined. I haven't put anything in the room yet, so it's a little tinny. So sorry about that. It's echoing in here. But anyway, yes. So this is my third novel, Hotel Laguna, and my first two are Montauk and The Showgirl. And I first started writing this in the beginning of 2022, right when COVID hit. I was living on the East Coast in New York City, and we were on lockdown, and I had turned in my second book, The Showgirl, to my editor, and it was time to start thinking about what I wanted to write next. And usually at this stage, I would want to go to visit a place that I was thinking about writing about, but of course it was COVID. I couldn't travel. And so I thought to myself, well, where would I want to live in my imagination for the next year and a half or 2 years, or however long it takes me to write this next book? And I kept coming back to the idea of Laguna Beach, California, because I had lived there right after college. I went to UCLA in Los Angeles, and I lived in Laguna Beach right after college. And it was the first time that I had a little place to myself, no roommates. I had my first paying job, my first taste of independence. And also, both of my parents are artists. My dad paints oil paintings, and my mom paints watercolors. And they've both exhibited in the galleries and art festivals in Laguna Beach. So I had this behind the scenes, had some behind the scenes scoop about the art world down in Laguna Beach. I thought to myself, okay, that's what I'm going to write about. I'm going to set it in Laguna. I can travel there. I imagined writing quirky characters and scenes set in Laguna Beach. But I had to figure out what is this going to actually be about? And I started, I settled on the place, Laguna, and then I settled on the time period of the late 40s after World War II, because I had read about the 6 million women who worked on the home front during World War II, like the airplane factories like Hazel does, but also ammunition plants and shipyards. And I found it really interesting that a lot of these women, after they worked these jobs, they were kind of disappointed to give up their roles, because they paid them well. A lot of them liked the work outside the home, outside of domestic responsibilities. And so I just started thinking that was interesting. And I mentioned it to my husband, and he told me that his grandma Ruth, was a Rosie the Riveter. And I was like, how did you not tell me this before? I write historical fiction. This is a very important detail. I mean, Sharon, you know, writing historical fiction, and especially when you have like some family ties to it, you're like, oh my gosh. So I got on the phone with my mother-in-law because his grandma Ruth has passed away and I never got to meet her, but I got on the phone with my mother-in-law and started quizzing her. And she knew actually quite a lot about that time of her mother's life. And so the story sort of took off from there. It's fictional, you know, so the beginning of her story was influenced by Grandma Ruth, but Hazel herself is fictional because, you know, it's more interesting to like throw some curveballs to characters. It's not that interesting to write about, you know, happy endings and just happy lives. You've got to throw some conflict in there. So that's how it got started.
And so that's how you sort of started the Rosie the Riveter, and then you that Rosie the Riveting and all the work at the Douglas Airplane company there. And actually it's in El Segundo. I used to work for Computer Sciences Corporation when it was called that, when it was headquartered in El Segundo. So, you know, I knew that area was kind of interesting. And I know a lot of you guys are from California have been there. So I saw some of the comments on Facebook, which is, I think is really, really interesting. But what kind of drove me, you know, to the story too, was the bringing in the art scene and this living picture. I can't remember what you call it. It's been so long since I read the book, but
the pageant of the Masters.
The pageant, yes, of the Masters. And then I saw that you had recently been to, or you did a book talk at the pageant, I think this year. So
yeah,
tell us a little bit how you got sort of, you know, the historical, you know, background on that pageant, and then brought it forward into the book. And then of course your experience there at the pageant, you know, some 90, 80 years later, or however long it's been. So yeah.
So that was really cool. And actually I knew I wanted to write about the art world and artists, and I knew that there was a lot of history in Laguna Beach with this artist community, but I didn't intend at the very beginning to write about the pageant of the Masters, because I didn't realize it had been around for so long. It's actually celebrating its 90th year this year, but I didn't realize when I started writing the book that it had been around for that long. So when I finally got to go to Laguna Beach and travel there and got to spend time in the library in Laguna Beach, I had been emailing back and forth with the librarian, and she'd been sending me articles and answering questions as best she could. But you know, you want to get in there with whatever research is available. So as soon as I could set foot in the library, I went down there. Also, while writing this book, I moved from the East Coast to California, so I was closer to Laguna Beach. And the librarian who I'd been communicating with, she brought out this box and she said, here are some things that I've put aside for you that I thought you might be interested in. And one of them was the original program from the pageant of the Masters from 1946, of the year that I was thinking about writing about. And so it was really amazing. Then I could read all these articles of, you know, how the pageant of the Masters, like how they put on this show and how they did it with makeup and costume and lighting, and pictures of like the behind the scenes. And also there were the names of all the volunteers who helped put on the show. But what was really helpful, it was like a magazine, what was really helpful was it had advertisements from all the local businesses in town. So I was able to see like which restaurants the characters would eat at and which dance halls they might go to and that kind of thing. So that was like just a real
Isn't that a gold mine though? I mean,
oh my
anybody that writes, I don't know if Eileen's on, I can't see her, but I'm sure she's here. But when you write this stuff, I mean, when you find, you know, an old newspaper and ads, I mean, that's what you do, right? Where do they have tea? Where do they go to lunch? You know, where did they?
exactly.
It's a gold mine, especially when you're writing in the 19th century, because you know, it's not a Google search away. So it's a much tougher research thing. So then the other thing I thought was interesting is, so you bring in, so the women, the plight of women during the war that were home and in the jobs that they had in manufacturing to help the servicemen abroad and the effort abroad. And then the artistry community and that pageant. And then you bring in this mystery, this sort of, you know, this very mysterious, you know, got to solve the puzzle. So how did that come about? I mean, so you got like three different, you know, kind of things going on in this book.
So that came about because the Hotel Laguna is a real hotel, and it's in Laguna Beach, and it's right in town on the boardwalk. I mean, up from the boardwalk a little bit, but it's right on the beach. And it's this real iconic building, and it's got a lot of history to it. Like Humphrey Bogart used to go there, Lauren Bacall used to go there. All these Hollywood elite would go down to Laguna Beach, and they would stay at Hotel Laguna as a little escape from the hustle and bustle of Hollywood. And actually, there were a lot of movies that were being filmed in Laguna at that time because of all the different varied terrain. You had the beaches and these little private, little beach coves, and then there's the hills in the background, and then of course there's the cute town and the hotel. So they filmed a lot of movies there at that time, like Lassie Come Home was filmed there.
Oh my gosh.
And A Star Is Born, but not the one with Lady Gaga, the one with what's her name? Not Barbara Streisand, Judy Garland, the original one, was filmed in Laguna Beach. And so there was all this like Hollywood, not a ton about Hollywood, but this sort of like Hollywood influence, and some that kind of went on from this hotel. And so I wanted to incorporate some of that into it. And so so I wanted to bring in this Hollywood starlet and the granddaughter, and just have these different elements like coming together.
Well, and I think you did a great job with it. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I got it. I think I read it in a day. And I just in case you guys were looking at my Facebook page, I think Instagram, I did it as well. In '93, I painted a view from there. And if you look at today's, view versus from that same spot versus then, lots have changed in the last 30 years. Now I'm dating myself, but it's an interesting place if you've been there.
That was such a beautiful painting. I was so
Well,
impressed.
It's not my current style, I can tell you. If anybody's seen my work, I just do palette knives and slap paint around now. But back then it was more of a, I had to be accurate. Today it doesn't really matter. I have no patience for it. So, but with that, I'm going to open up for a couple questions, and then we'll get back talking about the plot line and some of the developments and some of the creativity that went into the book. So does anybody have anything they'd like to ask to start with? And if you don't, I'm going to call on you. So, and you guys know which ones who I call on first. So with that, yes, Janet.
Okay. So I'm really glad that you suggested this book, because it isn't something that I, would have normally chose to read. And I was pretty happy reading it. I'm glad. I almost didn't get it on time from the library.
Well, this is a compliment, because she and I disagree on books a lot. So the fact that you like it and I like it, Nicola, you're doing good.
But I liked it. My one question though was, it seemed a little bit maybe out of character for her to just run away back to Los Angeles without saying boo to anybody. So that sort of kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, that she just sort of ran away and then all of a sudden, oh, I got to go back, So I'm wondering if you had considered maybe her talking to someone before she left, or doing something else in that area before running back to. I know she needed a job, and because she didn't have one, but she never even thought about talking to that attorney who would have given her all kinds of information. Didn't get until the end.
I think for me, she was kind of running away from Jimmy as well, because she thought he was, set up with this girlfriend that she'd made a fool of herself in front of. And then, she felt kind of like she wasn't needed anymore. She wasn't like, she had made herself kind of indispensable with Hanson, but then he was gone. And so she kind of was just like, I'm just going to go back to what I knew I liked before. But, there's always creative choices and what you can and can't do.
Yeah, it just seemed kind of like not saying a word to anybody when she had promised to be in the pageant was a little bit kind of rude. So that didn't seem like maybe that she would necessarily do that. Like maybe she would have gone and said something to somebody there, like I gotta go, and then leave,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But I also like to write kind of flawed characters too, who sometimes make bad choices.
You're flawed characters. Flawed characters are the best.
I kind of want to shake them sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Janet. So I think if I look at this, was it Kristen's next? I think, yes.
Okay, my question is very follow-on with that. It was that I noticed that Hazel as a character was weak in some areas and then super strong in some areas. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on the development of that character and how she got to be so strong. Because at the beginning, here she is, she's lost her mom and she's like living with this boy that she knows she's not going to marry. And by the end, she's like shacking up with the boyfriend. And I was like, whoa, she has made a total turnaround. We wouldn't blink on that in 2023, but obviously back then. So I guess just where do you feel like she drew her strength from? Which experiences in the book?
I mean, I think that she learned a lot from Hanson, even though he was a crotchety old guy and, was certainly not perfect. I think she learned a lot from him, and he kind of teaches her in his own way, sort of not to, or he doesn't necessarily teach her, but she kind of learns from him not to live life with regrets. So I think she grows in strength from that, and she just kind of grows into her own. I mean, just from the various experiences of and by the end, she's got this amazing thing handed to her, but even then she's kind of like, well, I want to make sure that I want to do this my way. And so yeah.
Miriam. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you so much for writing a really lovely book. I just enjoyed devouring it all in one day.
Oh, thank you.
And then I looked on my shelf and realized I have a copy of Montauk, so I got to read that too. So my question is, I know you said that this is all fictional, but I'm wondering if you based the character of the artist on somebody or some real artist. I mean, it's really easy to make cranky artist, but I'm wondering if you based him on anybody in particular.
Why do you always steal my questions, Miriam?
Sorry.
You're
It's
not
perfectly great.
You're not the only one to ask that question. In fact, at several of these book talks that I've done, that's the first thing people say. They said they put the book down and then they immediately Googled him to see if he was a real artist.
And he wasn't.
No, he's not. So he's not based on any particular person, but I was influenced by the artists of that time of the California Impressionist movement. And there was a whole movement of artists who were inspired by the California sunlight, and they would paint what they saw. So like if it was a sunset or sunrise and the ocean looked purple and the palm trees looked like a burnt orange color, that's what they would paint. They would paint what they saw as opposed to painting how they, what you think the colors it should be. And so they're really inspired by all of that sunlight and everything. But and so there are several of the artists of the time that are famous that I could have written about, but then I would have felt compelled to stay factually correct, because if I wrote about a real person, I would want to keep the timeline right and include all the elements of that person's life. And I didn't want to do that because then I would have been stuck plot wise and time wise and everything. So he's sort of an amalgamation of some of those characters and also just what I imagined an artist like him haunted by something from his past would be like.
So I want to take this a little bit further here. This is sort of, since I have that question, but in a little different light, was more from, on Hanson's character, did you draw him from someone in your life? To me, he felt like someone that you might have known, or, a composite of folks that you have been influenced by, or someone in your life, or someone that a character that you've read elsewhere. He had that sort of feeling like you knew him. I just felt that there are a lot of characters in the book, and obviously you know Hazel because you've developed her very well. But I felt like there was a personal relationship between the author and Hanson, because I think you nailed him so well. Is that am I onto something? Or
I mean, not really. I mean, yes, I felt like by the time I wrote this character, I felt like I knew him very well, and I felt like I had like this connection with this character, but he wasn't based on anyone in particular, except that my first job out of college, I had this really crazy kind of insane boss, but it wasn't necessarily him. He was like much younger and in a totally different field, but there were maybe some of those elements came in. But yeah, I mean, he was But I feel like that's always the way with fiction too. Like, even if you don't think you're writing about someone that you know, sometimes they are making their way in subconsciously.
Right. Okay. So Diane, you're next. I think, yes, Diane.
Thank you. I enjoyed this book and I really appreciate the art theme. And when I was reading it, my question was about your time sequences, you know, the flashbacks. And I'm curious as to why you chose to lay it out that way.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing that I had not done before and hadn't even necessarily seen it done that way before. So like, I've definitely seen books written where, you know, you'll have a chapter from the 1920s and then a chapter from present day, and then you kind of go back and forth all the way throughout the book. Well, with mine, the way I started writing this book was in a very linear way, starting at the very beginning when she's in Wichita, Kansas. And then I was writing all the way through. And then by the time I got to Laguna Beach, I was already like however many pages in. I felt like I was too far in for the Laguna Beach things to start happening. And I wanted to start in Laguna and then go back and sort of tell her story as to how she got to that point. And so I just tried it. I just tried it. And I went back until finally you catch up. And so, yeah, I just gave it a whirl and I just decided that's what I was going to do. But it's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because I haven't necessarily seen another book that does that, goes back and forth, and then you catch up with the story and then you just continue on from there. But it just seemed to work best for this story.
Thanks, Diane. It didn't confuse you, did it, Diane? No, yes?
No, I wasn't confused. I was just really curious.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
as
sometimes
to,
I get confused, but I didn't in this one. I'm just curious if anybody else did, because sometimes I'm like, I don't know where I am in a story, but this one, it didn't seem to do that for me.
No, because there were two separate, it was two clear locations and times.
Right.
It's good.
Thanks. All right, Teresa.
Hi, I absolutely loved your book also. I just thought it was just so much fun to read. It was another one I didn't want to end. And I wanted to comment about Hazel. I really felt like her flight, I just attribute it to like the fight or flight response that we have when something major happens in our life. I thought it was very in character for her to go back to Los Angeles. I mean, she just lost this man who she'd come to care for, you know, and all of the benefits that came for having worked for him, her place to live, as well as her means of supporting herself. So it's interesting how we all see things differently, but I thought that was, I don't know. I think I would have been disappointed if she had just stuck it out, you know, and I think because of her age, I think she was so young. Yeah. And also I really liked the way with Hanson, you had this really prickly, difficult personality, but you were able to then, you know, show him also as someone who had a great deal of emotion and feeling and, you know, his benevolence and everything. I really liked them both. I was thinking Sharon usually asks us who was your favorite character. And I don't know that I would say Hazel. I might say Hanson. I just thought he was really, really great. And I'm definitely going to look to your other books to read.
Oh,
thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, I didn't do a poll tonight because I'm not at my normal hole. But yeah, I think that Hanson was probably mine too. I liked his very, you know, cantankerous moodiness. I think that it was very, for me, it was very John Steinbeckish, or Ernest Hemingway would write a character like that, you know, he had that sort of feel to him. I got sort of the old man in the sea out of him a little bit, so yeah, I really liked him.
I'm glad you brought that up because one of my favorite scenes, maybe one of my hardest scenes, and also one of my favorite scenes to write was the one that happened at Victoria Beach with the Pirates Tower there, and she kind of like has this meltdown sort of out of nowhere, and he kind of consoles her, and that was the scene where I thought he's kind of a little bit of a father figure to her, and so I'm glad you liked him. I liked him too.
At one point, I was a little afraid that you were going to create a romance between the two of them. I'm like, oh God, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Because then I want to pick the book. But But thank goodness you didn't
Oh,
do
that
that.
would have been
I was a
weird.
I was a little worried there. Jane, I'll get to you after Carol, okay? Or you have to comment now? I see you. I'll wait till you after Carol, then I got you. Carol, Miss Cohen.
Okay, so hi, I'm sorry I kept raising my hand, but I thought I was clicking on the wrong thing to
That's
do
okay.
the hand
I tried to reply to you, but it kept saying Carol Cohen is not in this meeting. I'm like, okay, well, she just chatted me, so she must be
Well, no,
somewhere.
I was clicking on more and it said stop incoming video. Like that's probably what was going
I
on.
am so technology challenged. You guys, I'm surprised I can do this without like cutting half of you off. Apparently I was sharing screens earlier, and I've been doing this for 3 years now and I still can't get it right. So I understand. Go, Carol.
So
What you got?
I have like a lot of things to say, but I'll keep it limited. They're all positive, but I love the book. I love the way, Sharon said it would be a really good read for the summer, and it was a really good read. I did listen to it, and ironically last night, and I loved listening to it. The person who read it was great. I liked the characters. It really kept flowing, and I enjoyed listening to it anywhere I was listening to it. And last night I happened to be in the library, and what do I walk by but the book? So I took it out because I wanted to go over a few more, like the ending again, but then I was able to read the author's note. There was none on the audio. So it was really wonderful to read your author's note in the back of the book because it gave a lot more information. So I want to say that one of the things that I loved, and it's interesting that you talk about John Steinbeck, because the one thing I love about John Steinbeck's writing is that he just gave it to you straight. He didn't have to use a lot of similes and metaphors, and he just gave it to you straight. He described things, and that's the way I felt like I was there. I could see the characters in front of me. In fact, I think this would be such a great movie because I could just see the characters in front of me. And one of the scenes that I feel like I could just see was when she was like sleeping in the hotel in the bar, and he was like set up the bed for her, and it was just so real, and I really loved it. I love California. My son's lives in LA. My other son's visiting him from Boston, and I said, you got to go to the pageant of the Masters, because at first when I was reading it, I didn't realize it was a real thing. And then of course I always have to Google things when I'm reading. So, oh my goodness, it sounds like it's so fabulous. So I loved it. But
Well,
I want to
thank
say what my favorite thing about the book was, and that was about her being a woman who had worked in the airplane industry. Even though you made the whole thing about her a light character, and it was really serious business what happened to her and what happened to her later on in the book when she goes back and tries to work at the factory. I do a few talks on Eleanor Roosevelt, and last night I was actually talking about the Women's Land Army, and it was pretty much the same thing where they all took over the farming and the planting and the tractors, and then they were told go back to home and cook and change diapers, and maybe you could be a secretary. And I just really feel that whole theme, and as you were saying, about World War II books, but this was like a totally interesting and different aspect on the home front of World War II books. And I could just feel how she was feeling about, oh, well, I can use those tools. And it really is an amazing, I thought about the Rosie the Riveter. And I'm glad that you got to talk to a real Rosie the Riveter, because that's really awesome.
I didn't mention that here yet, that after I learned about my mother-in-law, my mother-in-law's mother being a Rosie the Riveter, I found this organization called the American Rosie the Riveter Association. Like, who knew there even is one? But they have chapters all over the country, and their whole point is to preserve the legacy and to celebrate women who worked on the home front during World War II. And so I got put in touch with 3 women who live at a senior living home near me. I live in LA in Manhattan Beach, but they were in Anaheim, which is kind of down towards Orange County, towards Laguna Beach way. And so I got to go and interview them a couple of times, and they were so lovely. One of them is 102, Phyllis. One of them is 95, Helen, and one of them is 90, Rusty. And so I got to chat with them all about their experience and what it was like and what they did, and specifically like the machinery that they used and all that kind of stuff. So it was really amazing to like speak to them.
Are you doing any talks for seniors about the book? Like are seniors reading the book at like senior facilities? Because I find that they really love hearing stories about the time that they grew up. Because
yeah, I have done one down in Seal Beach here in California, and I'll probably
Seal
do
Beach.
Seal Beach.
thank you. It was great. Loved it.
Thank you.
All right, and before I jump to you, Sarah, I know that Jane had her hand up, and she's moved on my screen. So
Okay.
Jane,
Okay.
there you are.
Yes, sure. Okay. So, yes, I just like everyone else, I love the book. It was a great read for August, you know, with a happy ending, and I was thrilled. But what really got a lot of my attention is that Hazel and Hanson, they really came to rescue each other, and they came from such a different world, you know, different age. But well, with Hanson, I think that she really opened him up. You know, he was so unhappy for a long time, such a talent, and unhappy, but I think that she finally got under his skin and that she really, by the time, of course, it's sad that he passed away, but I think he finally was at peace.
Yes.
That she was able to get this out of him, and he really became fond of her. And of course, he left her, you know, put her in the right place. He also recognized the relationship between her and Jimmy. And for her, I think she came to Laguna Beach, although she accomplished so much and helped the war effort, she was not all that mature. I think emotionally, she was just all over the place. And that shows, Phil, it was a little bit of a weakness, but I like that in her, how you were able to develop her character and how she really grew up in Laguna Beach. And she grew up because of Hanson.
Yeah.
I think he was also like the father who she didn't have, you know, he died young, and I think they really just rescued each other. And I thought it was so lovely how their relationship developed. And I loved him especially because he was so true to himself. He never really changed who he was. And then he softened up a little bit, and so I really enjoyed their relationship. And I'm glad that you gave him a happy ending. Thank you, because we need that sometimes. We read
Right?
So it was just a lovely book. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
that.
you, Jane. And like I said, I usually do a poll, and I don't know what's gotten into me, but it'd be interesting to see how many of you guys saw that he was going to do that. Can I just get a quick, before you get to Sarah, a quick show of hands? I got to go across two screens, but how many of you guys saw, or at least predicted, that he was going to leave her the apartment and leave her well? Yeah, a bunch of us. Yeah, we could kind of, we were like, oh, he's a good guy. I think we kind of saw it. We're like, come on, wake up, get back there, you know.
You guys were on to me.
But I'm sorry to interrupt him, but what I like is that she ended up getting, by being with Jimmy, that he would give her that opportunity to not just be a wife and a mother, but that they were able to work together. So she ended up really being able to, which I love that from a woman's point of view, in those years where most women, everyone was saying, get married, have children. And she really ended up with the right guy, and they were great partners in life.
Yeah.
Happy ending, happy story. All right, Sarah.
I agree with the movie feeling. I just think your writing is so descriptive. I read Montauk in the spring and felt the same way about that setting as well. And I'm wondering what you do to immerse yourself in the setting so that you can get it down on paper.
Well, so far, each book that I've written has come out of, it started with a sense of place for me. So for Montauk, I knew the town well because I used to have a little beach house there, and I saw it kind of changing over the years, and a lot of the mom and pop shops were selling up and, you know, heading out, and like new fancy restaurants and hotels were coming in, and I felt nostalgic for the way it used to be. So for Montauk, it was that I knew it very well and I wanted to write about it. It's kind of the same with Laguna, actually. I think it really helps to be able to write about places that you know, or places that you can visit. And like, I like, you know, when I'm writing a book, actually going down to a place, like I would sit down in Laguna Beach at a coffee shop and write some chapters there, just, you know, feeling all the sense of the community and everything around you. That just kind of helps bring it to life.
Great. Thank you.
Mindy.
Hi, Nicola. I want to thank you first of all, because you awarded me your book,
Oh,
the Thursday authors. So
Yes, that's right.
thank
I
you
didn't know,
so
I forgot
much.
you got one of them. I forgot that. Yeah.
I loved it. And I also had, and as someone else said, I also listened to the audiobook along with reading the physical book. I've been doing that for a while since the pandemic started. I really enjoyed the book. As someone who lives in New York lifelong, the idea of the Laguna Beach, I've never been there. It just took me away. And I hope someday to visit it in person, because it sounds really, I like the community idea, and, you know, and I really like that part of it. So I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to tell you that.
That makes me happy to hear. I will admit that when I was writing this book, I was like, for people who don't know Laguna, because if you live in the LA area or Southern California, most people have heard of this show, The Pageant of the Masters, or they've been to it when they were growing up, because it's just this very unique production that a lot of people go to. But I was kind of wondering when I was writing, I'm like, are people on the East Coast or in the South, or people who haven't, you know, heard of this before, are they going to get it? Are they going to understand what it is?
Right.
I found it fascinating. I loved reading about that, because I didn't know that much about it, and it really was fascinating to me. So
Okay,
thank
good.
you.
Well, thank you.
And folks on the call are from all over the place. I mean, I got
Okay.
Miriam in Columbus. We've got Janet out in the West Coast. I don't know if Diane's on, another Diane. There's another Diane. I think Diane O'Neill, you're up in, where are you? Minnesota someplace? Where are you? She's around. But people are from all over. So,
great.
and I have
Okay,
my
good.
Canadians here. I think Rita Seymour, I saw her on the phone somewhere. I've got a couple.
I'm actually from Stony Brook.
Stony
So,
Brook, okay.
yeah, I saw
Columbus,
Stony Brook.
Ohio
I'm like,
area. I
"Good,
mean, you gotta draw a big
good."
circle, you're in there somewhere, but you know, everyone, Carol's from Massachusetts. There are a lot of Virginia folks on the phone. I see Teresa's from Virginia, and Kristen, and I don't know, yes, Debbie is, there's a bunch of us. But yeah, from everybody. I mean, and like I said, we get together once a month and do this with usually new release stuff. And like I think we all said, I think we were a little tired of, you know, some of these books can get really heavy.
Right.
And you know, it's just nice to have one that was as I said, is an easy read. Like I finished it in a day. I think Miriam said she did. I'm sure many of you guys did as well. I do not do the audiobooks, and so it's great to hear some good reviews on that. Since you know, they're tough to get right sometimes. I mean, it all
Right.
depends on that reader.
They can make it or break it if the narrator is not good. So
Right. It seems like you had a good one.
Oh, good. I have a few pictures that I would love to share with you. Can I share my screen with you?
All right. Yes, if someone can direct me how to do that. How do I do that?
I think I do it. Let's see if it works if I do it.
Do I have to give her rights?
Is it asking you to give rights?
Started a screen sharing. Nope, there you go. You're up.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So let me just do this real quick. This is like a little presentation that I do, like sometimes when I'm, hold on. There we go. When I give like a talk sometimes. So I just wanted to share it with you guys and zip through a few of these. So these are just some pictures of Laguna Beach, but the one on the right is Victoria Beach with the tower. And that's actually a painting that my dad did.
Wow.
Of Victoria Beach. And so that scene where she has that like meltdown and that they have that bonding moment, Hazel and Hanson, that's where that takes place. And then these were some of the posters that the government would put out to sort of, you know, encourage women to take on these jobs because they hadn't ever done anything like this before. And it was like they needed a little encouragement, I guess. But also, I don't have them on here, but they also put out these posters that were like, you know, if you can iron, if you know how to iron, then you'll be great at using like the hydraulic press, because it's just like you pressing sheets of aluminum is just like ironing. And then there'd be other ones that were like, if you can sew, then you can use a rivet gun. So I just thought it was funny, some of the posters that they used to lure women into these jobs. This is Grandma Ruth that I mentioned, my husband's grandmother, who was the Rosie the Riveter, who inspired the beginning of this story. So I thought that's kind of a cool picture to share. And then this is one of the women from the Rosie the Riveter Association. This is not somebody that I met though. The ones that I met are here. These were the women who live in the senior living home near me. And that's Phyllis on the left is 102. So I took them some early copies of the book as well. And I probably am going to go and talk at their, where they live too. And the government also took pictures, like professional pictures of women working in the airplane factories, because they were continuously needing more people to go in and take on these jobs. So they kind of glammed them up and showed pictures. So they were helpful as well for me when I was writing this book. And these are just some pictures of, you know, you can see Hotel Laguna in the background there. That's reminds me of your painting, Sharon, a little bit. It's really cool.
Long ago.
Yeah, and then also you'll see on that picture on the left, there's the dance hall, Laguna Beach Dancing, and that whole boardwalk there is where some of the restaurants and stores were that they went to. But now in Laguna Beach, that boardwalk does not exist. The boardwalk exists, but there's no buildings there until further back, because in the 60s or the 70s, the town decided that these storefronts were blocking the view of the ocean. So they bought up all of that land, knocked down those buildings. And so now they call that, there's like a park area in front of the beach, and they call it the window to the sea. So they have it more open now. And then this is the pageant of the masters that I went to recently. I forgot to mention, you asked me to talk about this earlier. So we took a group of like 20 people. We met at the Real Hotel Laguna, had dinner there, and then went to the pageant of the masters. And so this is the show. It's like in an amphitheater outside in Laguna Beach. It has like 2,600 seats. And then these are the pictures up front that they recreate using real people. And from that program that I told you about that I got to see and in the library in 1946, I got to see which paintings specifically they created that year that I was writing about, which was really cool. And so these were some of those paintings: the birth of the flag, the cardinal's portrait, and and the raising of the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima.
I
So,
cannot see anything that you're showing. I don't
Oh,
know how you're doing this, but it is not showing up on my screen.
Are the rest of you able to see it?
Yeah, I have. I mean,
I
everyone
can
else.
see it.
Yeah.
Try, Janet, try changing the view. No, that didn't help.
Down at the bottom, there's a share screen button and mine is green. So is yours green?
Yep, it is.
Hmm.
This will stop other screen sharing. Do you want to continue? No. So,
I think this
Okay.
might be my last picture. I'm sorry. I don't know why.
I'm sorry, Janet.
Well, the good thing is it's being recorded, right?
Yeah, so you should be able to go onto the YouTube site Friday or
yeah.
Monday and see it there, Janet.
okay, I don't know how to do that either because I've never done that, but
I'll send you the link, okay?
yeah, please, thank you.
All right.
And
Oh
then
yeah, this is the classic, you know,
classic
yeah.
poster that they put out saying, you know, we can do it and come take these jobs. And I tend to like writing about strong female characters who are sort of, you know, don't want to be boxed into predetermined roles, and who are generally, you know, don't quite figuring out where they fit in the world at the beginning of the book, and then by the end they've sort of figured where they fit somehow. So this poster sort of spoke to me, and so that's pretty much it.
Love the beach costumes. There you go.
I know. Oh my gosh, I wanted to buy a lot of beach swimsuits from the period just for that, just for research.
Well, thank you. Thank you for doing that. I mean, I think it's been wonderful to get a
Okay.
sense, especially if you've never been there before. Which, you know, many of you have and maybe you haven't. So, Carol, you have a question because we're running on our time here. Yes, ma'am. We can't hear you, Carol. You're on mute.
One, you were already talking about who guessed the end. So I'm just wondering when you decided that was going to happen at the end, that because I had no clue that he owned the hotel unless I missed it somewhere along the
No,
way.
you weren't supposed to know
Yeah, I didn't know
Okay.
that part.
until.
So when
until
did you decide? And my other question is, if you were to liken him to anyone's looks, I keep trying to imagine what he looked like. And
Hanson, you mean Hanson, Carol?
yeah. That's
Um,
it.
That's a good question, because people often will ask me like, well, if a movie star was going to play these roles, who would it be? And I was watching a show recently. What's it called? Oh, it's a show about like therapists, and it's on TV right now. Harrison Ford was in it, and as I was watching it, because Harrison Ford's obviously much older now, and as I was watching it, I was like, Harrison Ford would play a good Hanson. So if anyone knows Harrison Ford, you can just, let him know that there's a book that he could.
Well,
play a
your
role in.
last name and his first name, have that in common. You could reach out, that way, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Or maybe not.
Exactly.
Any final thoughts before we let Nicola go? Well, I would ask you real quick, what is your next book? I'm sure you've got to be writing on something else. You can't just this works. You've always got one in the works, one in your brain, and then, one in an edit.
Yeah, it's very true. It's a funny game, really, this whole publishing business, because when a book comes out, you're already working on your next one because you turned this book in like a year before, and then it's been being copy edited and coming up with a cover and all that kind of stuff. So you're working on your next book. So yes, I'm working on my next one. I'm supposed to turn it in at the end of the year, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But the next one is set in the 1950s. I seem to be working my way through the decades, because Hotel Laguna was the 40s. The Showgirl, which is my book before that, was the 1920s, and Montauk was the 30s. So now I'm working on the 50s. And it's also set in Southern California on Balboa Island. I don't know if anyone's been to Balboa Island before. And it's like about 3 women who form an unlikely friendship. There's some tennis involved. And at the beginning of the book, they don't know each other at all. One of them is a mother with young children who's just moved to the area. One of them is a very popular, beloved woman who lives on the island with her husband, and they're kind of like the unofficial mayor and mayor's wife of the island. And then the third woman is a former disgraced tennis champion who's living on the island as a recluse and doesn't want anything to do with anyone. But the 3 of them, their lives become entwined from various different things that happen.
Interesting. You got a title for it yet?
No, not yet.
That's the
Well, I've
worst
got
part. It's the
several
hardest
going
part.
on. Yeah.
Hardest part of writing a book is coming up with a title. I'm telling you.
Sometimes I know from the beginning what the title is going to be, and then other times I'm like, I have no idea. Like Hotel Laguna, from the very beginning, it was Hotel Laguna in my mind. So
Great. Any final thoughts before I let Nicola go and finish her? It's probably, she's on the West Coast, so you and Janet are out there, it's still early.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you so
Thank you for
much. We
being here,
really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for
so
an
much.
enjoyable.
It was wonderful.
And
thank you so
Sharon.
much. Yes, thank
Yes,
you, Sharon,
for
for putting this
having her here
together. This has
with
been
us.
really wonderful. What an amazing group. I loved it. Thank you
They're
so much.
great. They're great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Um,
ladies, let me stop recording.
And if any of you are on social media, you can follow along with the publishing journey. I'm a Nicola Harrison, Nicola Harrison author, very original. And if any of you guys would like to, well, you've never mind, that's it.
Yeah, but yeah, please follow her.
Yeah.
You know, I can include her, if you want, just let me know and we can include you guys on her newsletter and keep up with her. Just follow her on her website and find out all the great things that she's doing. I have her on Instagram as well. I see more Instagram than I do Facebook for you, but I'm on Facebook more so than Instagram, but you can follow her there too.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much. I really appreciate it.
Uh-huh.